You are watching Sound Candy Talk live.
We'll share my notes with you so that you can interact with them in detail, because I would like us to perhaps have a few moments to engage each other on some of the issues that I may talk to. And I don't want our quarterly briefing to be a quarterly briefing where the Minister for Foreign Affairs comes and reads some remarks and we say that we have had consultations. So let's try and change the format a bit. But before I go deep into some of the comments that I want to highlight, I'll want to be able to highlight something about Kenya, a little bit about the regional issues and our perspective on some of the economic and global issues. And then from there we can have a conversation. But there has been a tragedy, as we all know, especially for the people in Myanmar and the Kingdom of Thailand, where thousands of people have lost their lives, and the process of recovery continues to evolve. So if you do not mind, I would like us to just stand in honor of the lives lost following the devastating earthquake in that region. Thank you. Please be seated. So let me perhaps start with the more difficult part. Kenya. I just want to let you know that in terms of Kenya's economic program, the program that has been running with the IMF has come to an end. And as we all know, engagement with the IMF and the World Bank is usually extremely essential because around that program, so many other bilateral and multilateral support or collaborative programs are involved. So I want to be able to say that as it came to an end, without going into details of numbers and what it means, I just want to say that the government of Kenya has now resolved that starting the spring meetings in Washington, the government of Kenya will start negotiations so that we can now have a new IMF program with our partners. The mechanics are usually some initial discussions and then a reciprocal team to come and have the detailed engagement with the various departments. So this is something that we want to pursue, and we hope that through those negotiations we can come to closure and we can have targets that we can genuinely say that this is now a commitment of the Kenya Kwanza government. Because what Kenya has been riding on is a negotiated program that was from the previous government. The merits and demerits of those, again, will be the subject of a debate on another day. But if I just give an example, it means that now if there are going to be targets set in that program, those are the ones that can be validly determined as Kenya Kwanza targets. Because some of the negotiated aspects, whether it was the tax, the debt ceilings, and so forth, were negotiated in the context of the previous program, which is now come to an end, and therefore we now have to engage afresh. And this may also call for some realignment as we go along with our development partners in some of the sectors that you are involved in. And I'm sure there's usually an opportunity, even within the framework of these negotiations, for consultations with the bilateral partners that are involved with various programs. So this may call for some realignment. We may have an opportunity during this period to look at projects where resources were earmarked, but maybe there was no drawdown, or we were unable there was no perhaps capacity to actually commit the resources and utilize them. Equally, maybe there were events where counterpart funding from the government of Kenya was not readily available, so certain programs may have stalled. So this will give us an opportunity to start looking at that properly. But I want to underscore that we all know that it is important to have a program so that we can move along together. So that is something that I can just highlight around the economic area. The other thing that I may want to put on the table for Kenya is that we are on course in establishing the IEBC. This is extremely important in my view. And we are doing it in good time so that the electoral body can be in place for the election of 2027. And I would like to invite you to recollect that what is going on is a process that was negotiated under the NADCO framework. And after a protracted legal battle, the courts set aside that process to allow the IBC to be constituted. But Kenyans being what they are, it becomes an Oliver Twist kind of situation. I've got it, but I still want more. So all I want to tell you is that we are on track. There'll be people still saying that we are not getting a fair deal or this should not happen. But rest assured, and some may even want to go to court again. And we need to know some of these could be genuine concerns, but equally, we must also appreciate that there are those who would always want to create an obstacle to delay a process. This process we can't afford to delay it again as Kenyans, and we would like your understanding on this so that when you see the debates in the media, when you see people talking about it, I think what is important is let us keep our eye on the ball, let us have the IEBC constituted, let the IEBC now start its preparatory work for the 2027 elections so that we are not caught on the wrong foot. So As you listen to them, please bear in mind that it is our resolve that the IBC is constituted and it's put in place to prepare the country for proper democratic processes. We in Kenya have always had our elections in the cycle that it's supposed to be, every 5 years, without fail, since we got independence. And we have no reason to set ourselves up for failure in 2027. I think I thought that might be very, very useful as two key aspects for this interaction with us. Let me also point out that a critical area is also the DRC now, if I may move away from the Kenyan landscape. And just to state that, as you are all aware, there's been the conversation that has merged the process. The EAC SADC process is now unified. This process has been briefed also to the AU. In the briefing in Addis, it was also done in the presence of the Secretary General of the United Nations at the Peace and Security Council in Addis. And indeed, even the Secretary General gave a statement to the Peace and Security Council. Subsequently, the position was also adopted by the Heads of State Summit in Addis. So the EAC SADC process has attained recognition both within the African Union. The report is also within the UN framework. And the President of Kenya as chair of EAC and the President of Zimbabwe as chair of the SADC summit have been having a conversation. We were in Zimbabwe after the first meeting of 8th of February in Dar es Salaam. We were in Harare, and we made some recommendations. And recently, in a summit, virtual summit, President Obasanjo, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President Saleh Wake, and President Catherine Samba, and indeed there was also President Musalia from South Africa, who are nominated to be the 5 facilitators of this dialogue, the EAC SADC dialogue. We subsequently got communication that His Excellency from South Africa, Musalia, was engaged elsewhere and he may not be able to take up the assignment. And I think consultations with SADC and the EAC, but more within SADC, the message we are getting is that I think they'll be settling on President Masisi of Botswana, and then that will be complete. I just want to highlight that I bring this forward to you because the merging was to make sure that we eliminate forum shopping so that we can have one unified process. Therefore, my appeal to you this morning is that as you talk to your capitals, let us encourage the channeling of all the support that may be necessary through to this one singular process so that we avoid duplication. Whether we want to say the Rwanda process succeeded or the Nairobi process didn't succeed or vice versa, or Nairobi succeeded, this one didn't, that can be a debate in the boardrooms. But I think what we need to figure out is that time is of essence, and this peace process must move forward. From the 8th of February, when the first decision was made, now we have the facilitators in place. What is important is to get the facilitators working, because definitely that is now almost 2 months. So we need to find a way of eliminating protracted bureaucracies within the two economic regional blocks, the EAC and the SADC, and all other areas. And in this conversation, the briefing that was held recently by the president, the AU was also in attendance. They were represented by the Peace and Security Council Commissioner, Bankole. So we need to hasten because the situation is not improving until we really get everybody on the table. There have been initiatives that have been reported where Qatar has also invited I don't know whether to call them warring factions in DRC to meetings. But what is important, that they have also come out recognizing the need to support the EAC SADC initiative. From the Kenyan perspective, President Ruto has offered, if need be, the final decision will lie with the facilitators, but President Ruto has offered to provide facilities to house any meetings that they would want to have. And where it may be necessary is perhaps for our partners to think on what logistical support they can lend to this initiative as we go forward. If the facilitators think otherwise, Kenya is still flexible. What is important is to have the process moving forward. And I would want to appeal for your support in helping us deal with this. We had a visit also from the special advisor from the Trump office government, Dr. Masad Bulos. We talked about many things, bilateral, but on this regional aspect, I just want to state that they were in consonance as well, that it's important that we have one unified process that can help us to achieve peace and stability in the DRC. Now, let me also clarify a couple of things in the region. We have a new challenge in South Sudan. It has been there before, but it's a challenge that we now must also put a spotlight on. The situation remains as you know it. I think one of the vice president has been held in a manner that refrains him from undertaking certain activities. And we as Kenya sent a special envoy, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. He was accepted there, but he was not allowed to see Riek Machar, to maybe hear a version from his end. We were destined as ministers of foreign affairs earlier to also go there to have a conversation as IGAD ministers. But the government of South Sudan at the 11th hour sent a message that they were not ready to receive the ministers. So that session was deferred for a later date. Clearly, there was also another delegation sent by the AU, and all the courtesies were accorded, but just like with the Raila situation, that AU delegation, panel of the wise, was not allowed to see Riek Machar either. So that remains a gray area that may require a lot of diplomatic effort, even from behind the scenes, to have conversations with different interlocutors so that we can mitigate the situation in South Sudan. The president was launched the Shirika plan formally at State House a few days. This is the whole package of trying to integrate refugees. It has become a flagship of the UNHCR program, and Kenya has been leading. So he launched it. But some of the indications as he was launching this is that because of the heightened tension in South Sudan, we are beginning to see an inflow of about 20 or so new refugees trooping into Kakuma on a daily basis. So that, if we don't stem it, could mean the numbers could swell again in that region. So there's every reason to look at it, and also bearing in mind that the pressures that are now evident globally, whether it is support through the WFP or UNHCR in different areas in terms of support to the refugees, with the geopolitics that is taking place, I think clear and decisive intervention will be necessary, because the resources may not be readily available to deal with some of the challenges there. On Sudan, let me state very clearly that there was the conference that took place here in Nairobi. I think they call it the Taasisi meeting, Taasisi or Charter meeting. And for the avoidance of doubt, no government of Sudan was declared or formed in Kenya, in Nairobi. I want that to be understood very clearly, because there's been some misinformation that a parallel government of Sudan has been formed in Kenya. That is not true. And we have had a chance to look at their documentation. There is no such wording of a government being formed in Kenya. And I'm sure some of you may also have had access to the charter that was signed by the Sudanese parties in Nairobi. Please scrutinize it, because there's no such decision. And it's important we clarify this. And I think we need to distinguish sometimes terminology of self-determination. Sometimes self-determination can be seen as fighting for independence and whatever, but in a number of constitutions in the region, the terminology self-determination appears in number of clauses. I think if you look at the South African Constitution and others, you'll come across this terminology. So in this case, the principle of self-determination should not be misconstrued as if Kenya is facilitating a separatist state. We stand for a peaceful Sudan, unified Sudan, one Sudan, and it is important that they get together. Our issue as a country is that we believe in mediation, and there will be different countries from time to time that may have challenges, and Kenya will not shy away from offering an opportunity for peaceful conversations, as we have done in the past for Angola, as we are doing for South Sudan, as we have done for Somalia. We shall continue to encourage that kind of conversation, but we shall not form governments in exile in Nairobi for other countries. Those must be determined by the people themselves. And the debate for Sudan is that it should not be a dialogue of the generals alone. What about the civil society? What about the political parties? What about the other organizations and individuals of Sudan? At what forum will they be put to also have a conversation about their own country? So it is on this principle that the issue of Sudan came in, but I hope I hope by this comment we set the record straight, and any misunderstanding around that space should perhaps dissipate. Of course, we know they say Kenyan tea should not go there, but that's a trade issue. But on the part of Kenya, we want to state that in spite of all these challenges, a lot of the humanitarian efforts that take place in Sudan, in terms of logistics, in terms of supplies, in terms of, will continue. And Kenya shall not in any way interfere with that process. So we are putting our case in good faith, and we shall not interfere. So whatever activities that are humanitarian, that are also in support of the people of Sudan, where there's a serious humanitarian crisis, Kenya will continue to play its role in the international arena to support those efforts. Let me touch briefly on Haiti. We lost two of our personnel to the violence in Haiti. It's most unfortunate, but we are still committed, working within the framework of the UN resolutions, to continue with this support. Of course, the term of the mission should end in September this year. But in between, there are some petitions that are within the UN framework, and I think the Secretary General of the UN made some comments to it. So we await some reactions so that we can collectively understand how the international community is looking at the Haiti agenda, and hopefully on how we can work together to be able to deal with it. We also urge that we continue our efforts to support Somalia collectively. I think it's very important. In the African proverbs, they always say that the most dangerous moment and tragic moment is when the pot of water breaks at the doorstep. Somalia has been walking a journey, and we should not allow a situation where the pot breaks at the doorstep. So the efforts that we've been putting in, let's put in, because we have seen some resurgence of the terrorist elements, and we all know of the incidents that took place not too long ago. So let's have collective support to be able to support the challenges there. We have had visits, which you will take note of from my remarks. We had the King of Lesotho, he was in Kenya. We had the Majesty's King and Queen of the Netherlands recently. As I said, we have also had the visit from the Special Advisor of the United States of America, Dr. Masad Boulos. We recently had a visit from, I think until last night, from the Defense Secretary from the United Kingdom. We also have some outbound trips. The President was in Namibia to attend the swearing-in ceremony of the new head of state, Madam Nandi, the first female president in Namibia. I was there, and I saw firsthand how a general becomes the first husband. Quite an interesting event there. But so that is how the world is becoming. Let me say that the President of Kenya is also scheduled to make a state visit to China in the course of this month. And apart from that, there are meetings for COMESA lined up. The President will also be, there's the TICAD meetings in Japan, which he will also be attending. There could be others that would come in between. Sometimes you cannot really program all of them. Sometimes some come in as a would I say emergency kind of visit. Let me also say that we are aware of the issues around the challenges of the ETA. There are still challenges in that space. And my PS continues to talk, especially with the immigration department, so that whatever is still giving us a problem, we can help in refining that space, because indeed we've had representations of inconveniences from quite a number of our friends and partners in this space. We are also reviewing the Powers and Privileges Act as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because over the years things have changed, and we are looking at that act so that we can make it fit for purpose in the current circumstances. If you do have any suggestion, if the PS has not invited you for any contribution, or if he has not solicited any contribution, let me do it once again on the behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If indeed you have some way that you think we can improve the Powers and Privileges Act, please send us a short memo specifically highlighting the area that you think needs some consideration. That is public participation. So please, we are ready to receive some comments, some advice, some case studies, some examples. I think it will help us so that we smoothen that space. We have completed the sessional paper, Kenya's foreign policy sessional paper. Remember, we started a journey. We had a policy evolve. That policy was approved by cabinet. It was then converted to a sessional paper, which was approved by cabinet. The sessional paper is in parliament, and last week, after public participation, the processes, the relevant department for defense, security, and international affairs is now doing its final report, and then the sessional paper will now be formally on the floor of the House for the second reading, which is the debating portion. And we trust that there's been a lot of consultation, and this will be a moment for us to be able to say that Kenya's foreign policy, the fundamentals of it, are now available for everybody to understand, to know, and to know Kenya's position on various critical issues. I think I have done well. If I may give myself some self-assessment, but in the process there'll also be some conversations around there's our envoy on matters technology, Mr. Thigo, and others. I would maybe when we're interacting, I would want him to have a minute or so just to talk about that space, and especially bearing in mind that we just came from the Global Artificial Intelligence Summit in Kigali. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. And please enjoy your coffee as we have a few minutes, and that I will leave to the PS to moderate. Thank you so much.
I became momentarily deplatformed there. But thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the depth of your comment. You've given us a snapshot of the state of affairs within the country, the region, and our view of things around the world. Just again to emphasize one point that you made on the right to self-determination, Kenya is a believer in the right to self-determination. It's particularly its external, but fundamentally its internal dimensions, which has to do with enlarged participation for citizens, for people. It has to do with, for countries as complex as our own, and in other contexts, it has to do with the devolution, amongst others. And so I think that's the context in which our reading of the charter of some of the groups from Sudan entails. In the interest of time, I want to give time for all of us to be able to intervene briefly. But before we do that, allow me just to give a chance to two people, Her Excellency Ambassador Bangura to make a comment, and then I'll ask Ambassador Thigo to equally make a comment. Do we have a roving mic somewhere? Do we have a roving mic? Okay. This will be the roving mic. Let me allow Ambassador Mangura to intervene and then Figo, and then I'll open it up to the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Mine is not very long, couple of comments. First, I want to thank the government of Kenya for their unconditional support to UNON, the agency funds and program in Kenya. And I'm saying this not because of what they're doing for us here. As you're all aware, UNON is in a very expansive position. And by 2030, we'll be investing $340 million to expand the offices and the conference facility. It has been a tough negotiation process in New York, and the government of Kenya, we worked very closely with them to mobilize the G77 and China, and all the member states, all of you. So that for me is important. Secondly, they're working very closely with us to give us the required supports that the facility need as to expand offices and conference facility. They've set up an interagency group with all the ministry, water, energy, ICT, infrastructure, to sit with us and ask us, what do you need? Because you are bringing more than 9,000 people, you're expanding the number of offices in Kenya. What is it that we can make to make your stay here easy? Of course, we do have challenges in facilitation, but the good thing about this is that we're engaging on a regular basis to look at each of the problems, whether it's ETA, whether it's visa, whatever it is. So those discussions are ongoing. So I think it's important for us to recognize that they're contributing to making sure our stay in Kenya is actually good for us as UN. Second, I want to thank the diplomatic community for the support to the UN. I say to myself, and I say it in New York, I say, I'm the luckiest DG because of the tremendous support, collaboration, and engagement I'm having with the member states in Kenya. On a regular basis, we brief them, and their support to us and their messages to the member states in New York has been excellent. So I need to thank you, because we could not have been in this position where we are without all of you. I want to recognize the excellent work being done by our UNCT, because Kenya is the hardest, if you say, is the only, what we have in Kenya, we don't have in any other country in the world. We have everything that is being done in the UN is in Kenya, other than the Atomic Agency. So whether you have UN headquarters, UN global offices, UN regional offices, peace and support, operation, humanitarian development. But most of us are global operation. We actually live in Kenya, but we don't work on Kenya. So we have the team that is dedicated to supporting the government of Kenya, and that's under the leadership of the resident coordinator. So I think it is important for us to recognize and to continue to ask the government of Kenya to continue engaging and working with the UNCT. They are doing a great job, an excellent job. So I really need to recognize and appreciate them. I think the last thing I want to say is about the UN at 80 initiative. You have had it. On the 11th of March, the Secretary General wrote a letter to member states. The letter did not come about because of the America. It came about because we are challenging times. We're looking at ourselves. How can we deliver more effectively, more efficiently, on time, with the limited resources we have? So SG has set this. All I can say, member states, the Kenya Nairobi is in the heart of it. I am in the task force. It's 15 member states across the whole UN family, and at the policy level. Chris, my deputy, is at the working level. We will brief you. We're having our second meeting today, but as we move ahead with that, I just want to let the member states know we will brief you on what it's all about, how it's going to affect Kenya. We will also talk to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government, because this is very critical. You've seen the video, you've seen they are bringing many people. All I can say, we will talk to you. We will debrief you, we'll explain to you what it's about, what action is going to take, how it affect the UN. But the most important thing, we have to develop effectively, we have to survive in a very different way. It's going to be a lot of challenges, but I continue again to ask you, please continue your support to the UNCT country team, because that's very critical for the development agenda of Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Bambura. I'll give a minute to, and I mean a minute, to Ambassador Figo, and then we will go to the Ambassador of Jordan.
Thank you so much, PS. And if I can ride on already existing protocols, yeah. I'll be very quick. Thank you so much, the Prime Cabinet Secretary. My brief is very quick. The Global AI Conference on Africa was held in Rwanda just last weekend. AI stands to add about $19 trillion to the global economy, potentially injecting $2.9 trillion into the Africa economy by 2030. It also has the potential of uplifting about 11 million Africans directly. And so that summit that brought about 2,000 Africans, including diaspora, about 100 AI companies from 95 countries, was a statement that Africa is potentially at the cusp of grasping artificial intelligence and harnessing it for its own development. The announcement that was quite particular to Kenya, and the delegation was led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, was the establishment of an AI factory in 5 countries: Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco. The Kenyan portion of the AI factory is quite significant, because for the first time we'll have the most advanced AI capabilities in the region that could be shared with our neighbors. It also ensures that we can foster innovation. We can support our startups, we can build research capacity and capability, but also we can promote economic growth. The reason why this is important is we partnered with NVIDIA and Cassava Technologies, led by Mr. Strive Masiwia. We jumped 7 years in line to access those GPUs because we didn't have access for that. Thank you,
Ambassador Figo. Thank you very much. I know you have a lot more to say. Ambassador Jordan. And those of us who want to intervene, please, if I could see by a show of hands. Ambassador Sweden.
Good morning, Excellency CS. Good morning, everyone. PS. Excellency, would love to hear from you a few words about the Kenyan position on the Middle East situation. Many things is evolving there: Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria. Would appreciate to hear a few words about your situation, Kenyan situation, your position on what's happening right now. Thank you, sir.
Ambassador Caroline.
Good morning, Cabinet Secretary, Prime Cabinet Secretary Mudavadi. Good morning, colleagues. This was an excellent briefing. Thank you very much for this initiative. We had, or I hosted my colleagues from all the UN capitals around the world here in Nairobi last week. And it was a bit of a scary experience, I must say, when we had our discussions about how much money is sucked out now out of the global multilateral system. I think that brings us all to think about how we can work better together. And there I would like to say it's of course up to us as donors to do that, but I think we need also those who are on the receiving end to step up their game. And here, for example, in Kenya, I think we had a coordination under the former vice president, but now the Development Partners Group have not been able to meet for a very long time. And it is really to the detriment of the donor community. We have quite big difficulties to run after different Kenyan parts of the administration. And I would just like to encourage you to try to move this forward so we can, because I think there's a lot of money that has disappeared and much more will disappear in the future. So now we have to make the most out of every crown or dollar or shilling we are dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Caroline. Do we have any other intervention? Ambassador Gan, please.
Thank you very much, PS, and good morning. PCX/CS. Good morning, distinguished colleagues. Just a brief comment. When the CS was talking about the economic elements of his briefing, it was so restrictive, limited to just Kenya's engagement with the IMF. And I was wondering, in the era where we find ourselves, whether the issue of the African Continental Free Trade Area is no longer an issue worth pursuing by, the African continent. I was expecting that some pronouncement will be made as to how far we can, where we are, how far we can pursue that agenda, because to some of us, intra-African trade is the best option that we have to get ourselves out of the doldrums where we find ourselves. And I think that I have said at different fora that I think that that's the best that Africa can have. Among all the flagship programs that Africa has, from the African Union, the African Continental Free Trade Area is the best that have been bequeathed to us. And to me, where we are in terms of the discussion, deliberations, and negotiations, we are at a point where political leadership is more significant, the economic dimension of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ghana. Seeing no other hand, I'm now pleased to, I don't know whether Your Excellency you want to take. Can I take some? All right. Maybe you could. Do you?
Okay. Now can I just have that? I've made some notes there. But let me start with Ghana. Thank you, Your Excellency, for flagging it. All I can say is that I did not ignore it. It's actually in my notes. What we are going to circulate, I have dedicated some comments on this very issue that you raised. So we have not downgraded it. And of course, I was trying to look at the element of time. How much can we really tackle here? But you raise a fundamental issue. And I think we are all reasonable nations, and we all understand. And the geopolitics has completely transformed. So it behoves on Africa to look at its whole economic and trade arrangements more critically than they have in the past. And the whole issue of inter-African trade becomes important. On the issue of the geopolitics, I think it's important, in my view, that perhaps an urgent meeting needs to be convened by the African Union Commission of perhaps the key experts in terms of perhaps the ministers for finance and the ministers for trade and ministers for foreign affairs to convene urgently so that they can have some conversation around this changing dynamics, how to deal with the issue of the tariffs, its implications across. How do we now really look at our own internal inhibitions? Because as much as we talk about the impact of the policies that are maybe emanating from Washington, we also have to look critically amongst ourselves, because even we as African countries, we have been very restrictive in allowing trade, free flow of trade and goods and services amongst ourselves. And I think it is something that we need to look at very, very critically, internally, as much as we'll be looking at the global arena. On the Middle East and Gaza, I think we had pronounced ourselves on this some time back, and we maintain the same position, that Kenya stands for a two-state solution. We are very clear on this, and the trouble that is there, and we all are appealing for an end to it. The atrocities that keep on appearing are heart-rendering, and we would like that to come to an end. As a matter of fact, even for avoidance of doubt, in Kenya's session of paper, this matter is being pronounced in the session of paper in terms of Kenya's position on this particular issue. So maybe for the avoidance of doubt, with Parliament seized with it and Kenya's position pronounced there, I hope we shall not have any more questions around what is Kenya's position on this issue. I believe in settling fundamental matters once and for all. And this is one of those very, very important matters, so that Kenyans know and the international community knows what is Kenya's position on this matter. I think the meeting of the international partners and ourselves, I think I've taken your message. We need to quickly have a deeper conversation on that matter. And I do agree with you that we need to rationalize very quickly, because resources are going to become scarce. In any case, I think we were already seeing a steady decline on international aid flows. And what may have happened will only accelerate it. And not too long ago when I was in Geneva, we did, I met the people of the Global Fund on Health, and they were actually even appealing. And President Ruto has already made some, he has started making some steps on this to appeal that the Global Fund on Health, the replenishment that is due, that we have a concerted effort to try and at least maintain the support there, because part of it has gone. With the changes that have been announced, we all have to also look at interventions around the UNHCR. I think there was indication that perhaps 40% of their budget could also be affected. So these are genuine issues, and it calls for us to use whatever resources we have prudently and with the most impact where they would go. In fact, one other debate that has been in the papers is the whole debate of public participation in Kenya. And I want to bring it to the table because it also calls for your intervention. We have done a study through the Department of Parliamentary and Legislative Affairs, which falls under the office of the PCS. And there are about 700 pieces of legislation, either policy or statutory or or in fact, maybe sessional papers in different sectors. And we asked each department, please give us your costing, because we have a constitutional requirement of public participation. But there's no bill for public participation, no legislative. It's in the Constitution, and the AG's office and our office, I think starting from this week, or you'll start seeing some activity around public participation. And we have lost a lot of time, a lot of legislation, because courts have ruled if you didn't do public participation, the law is unconstitutional, you have to go back to the drawing board. But my interaction with some senior people within the judiciary was that we have always had a conversation around public participation from a different angle, but nobody has focused and made a case for the cost of public participation vis-a-vis actual delivery of programs or services or projects. So, going back a little, the piece of legislation that we asked, the 700, we told each ministry, give us an estimate of what it takes for you to have this to mature to a piece of legislation. And we are getting figures of, at the lowest, 10 million shillings, at the highest, 100 million shillings. Now, if we just go by the rule of thumb, and you say, let's go with a baseline figure of 10 million, then it means to enact 700 pieces of legislation or deal with the policies, we need 7 billion shillings. How many hospitals will we supply with medicine? How many bridges will we put up? How much more can we do to provide employment for the young people? So I'm putting it to you that the whole issue of public participation, even though it's a constitutional requirement, let us all examine this. There are multiple layers of public participation. At the executive, they call their workshops, they call their seminars, they move out. It then goes to Parliament. Parliament has another process of public participation. You then have a situation where you now have to do statutory, the subsidiary legislation emanating from the law, another process of public participation. So multi-layers of public participation on the same thing. Some by the ministry, then you have to do public participation by the county governments, then you have to do public participation by the state agencies, perhaps revolving around the same issue. Honestly, is this proper utilization of resources for any nation, and particularly a developing nation like Kenya? It doesn't make sense. So without negating the constitutional requirement, I think we collectively can work towards making sense of this so that we use our resources appropriately. And we also ask our donor partners, please look at your portfolio mix carefully, because we would rather have more of your resources to provide the medicine, to build the bridges, than to facilitate public participation. Look at the ratio carefully. Thank you.
I'll not belabor the point, but I think on the matter of Israel and Palestine, the Prime Cabinet Secretary has stated the position. I think we have noted with deep, deep, deep concern the dire situation that continues to evolve in that part of the world. I think it's known to everybody that we are very close allies to, Kenya is a very close ally to Israel. We advocate very strongly for a two-state solution. But what two-state solution in the face of a flattening of Gaza? How viable is that two-state solution approach? And so I think we are at a very difficult point, even in terms of policy on this matter. But we cannot shut our eyes to the humanitarian disaster and the egregious destruction of life and property. And we are continuing to join the rest of the world in taking a very firm position with regard to some of the violations that we have noted. And we will work closely with our friends in the Middle East, our friends in Africa, our friends in Asia, our friends in Europe, to ensure that some semblance of respect for international law remains. Because what's the use then of having all these regimes of laws, that have sort of excluded some parties from compliance? If there is a law, if there is a rule, then we must all comply by it. Otherwise, it's not really a law, it's not really a rule. And so it puts to jeopardy, I think, the entire enterprise of international law and the international system. And we stand, in favor of the proposition that we must defend the validity of international law. And on that, if Kenya has, with regard to international law, Kenya, I think, should be held responsible. If any country flouts international law, I think the validity of that law can only stand if that country is sanctioned. And so I think we are in a difficult place, ladies and gentlemen, and we must, I think we must continue to have this discussion, but Kenya stands firmly on the side of saying that we will vote in support of very clear positions that protect the existence of our people, whether it's the Jewish people, whether it's the Palestinians in the Middle East. So that's a view that we stand for, and we will continue to defend very firmly. I know we've taken a lot of time, but on the matter that Ambassador Caroline raised, I know that I'm meeting His Excellency Stephen Jackson just after this meeting to be able to precisely address the issue of development partners. And it is true that we are lagging behind in this respect. We had a political process, as you know, that made it difficult for certain things to happen, but I can assure you that we are focused on this matter right now and will address it. And so on that note, it's not going to be breakfast. I think it's going to be brunch. I think brunch is available, and ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, thank you very much for joining us on this briefing, and we look forward to more in the days ahead. Thank you very much.